All right, everyone, we're now live. Make sure you scan in so you can start the class. YouTubers, if there's anybody listening, if you have any questions in the chat, make sure you enter live questions and I'll answer live. Got 10 people checked in. Come on, everybody. Get this rolling. All right. Whoever's watching on YouTube, let me know if the sound is good and the image. All right. Last minute check in, right? Make sure your cameras are on. Everybody must have their cameras on, please. Otherwise, it does not count. You guys already know. Can you guys do me a favor? Anybody that can get onto YouTube real quick, just let me know if the sound or image is good, please. Want to confirm because I did some updates on the computer, so not sure what's happening right now. I appreciate that. Jonathan, when you have a moment, come sit down so we can start. Eduardo, turn your camera on, please. And Gilbert, I can barely see you. Yeah, there you go. He's alive. Sebastian says sound is fine. Perfect, thank you. What about image? Is the image okay? Totally clean. Perfect. I watched it yesterday, so yeah. All right. I know. It's only Monday. Andrea M, do you have more books on school? There are books arriving hopefully this week because we have a morning class starting on Wednesday. So I should be getting more books hopefully either tomorrow or Wednesday. I'll let you know. Okay, cool. So I think everybody checked in, right? All right, so there you go, appraisals. Ready? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Let me see that. All right, cool. So my first question is, I got to start with questions all the time, right? My first question is, what is appraising? What is appraising? Melanie, well, actually, Brenda, change your name from Melanie to Brenda. Make sure your names match. And if you have extra people on camera, like kids, for instance, I'll charge double. Right? Just letting you know. Estimate of value. Okay. There you go. What else? Evaluating. Estimate of value. Estimation. Estimate. Give me something else. What else could it be? Cost. Okay. Anything else? Steven, I see your chin. I don't see your face. Oh, there you go. Right there. Is there any other opinion you guys might have as to what appraising is? The worth? Okay. Any other opinion, guys? YouTubers, if you're watching, you can also participate. Calculation, okay. But is there any other opinion? Rating? Well done. Why is this moving everywhere? I was giving you the answer, absolutely. All right. So here's the thing. Let's see. There shouldn't be. An appraisal should likely be based on facts or stats back to, yeah. So Josh, yes. So I just want to focus on one thing, which is this right here. It's opinion or estimate of value. Now, the reason why I'm saying opinion first before anything else, even though you are correct, Josh, I'll go more in detail in a second, is because it's very simple. Everybody has different ways of seeing things. Everybody gives different values, right? So unfortunately for you guys, you have the same view of me, right, as everybody else. So Josh, you see me the same way, Ron the same way, because that's what I'm showing up on the screen, right? But if there was people here, they're looking at me at different angles, different perspectives, right? The same thing goes for real estate. When you look at it, or this phone, when you look at it, do you guys have the same view that I have? No, because I'm seeing this side. You guys are seeing this side. It's still a phone, does not change, right? It's still me, does not change. But everybody has their own perspective, right? So, wait, yeah, you're coming. So that's what it is. An appraising is an opinion of value. Now, we estimate the value, or we give opinion of value based on facts, based on information that we can find, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the only opinion that it exists, right? So can we have another appraiser come out and give a different value to the same house? Sure. Can you, as a realtor, feel that appraiser is wrong? Sure. Because everybody has a different opinion, or again, estimate of value. It's based on perspectives. So, hold on. I think I lost somebody. All right, meanwhile, go ahead, check in. Poliana, check in. Can I see the prices around my area? Okay. So you can see comparables. Okay, you cannot see what do you call it? You cannot see appraisals around the area, right? But you can see comparables, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about as well. Sorry, let's slow down there. Sorry guys, just one quick second. Sorry guys. All right. So where were we? So we're talking about estimating and opinion of value. Now, the valuation of real property is one of the most fundamental activities in the real estate business, and its role is particularly critical in the transfer of real property, since the value of a parcel establishes the general price range for the principal parties to negotiate, right? So when you know the value of a house, the next house is easier to appraise, right? So the first one on the block is going to be tough if there's nothing else to sell. We're going to talk about this. Once an appraisal happens in the area, it gives value to the next one and to the next one to the next one. That's called comparables. Now, what we do is we estimate value. We don't do appraisals, so it's very, very important you understand this difference. As far as value, right? Real estate value. This is, in general, it's the present monetary worth of benefits arising from ownership of real estate. So, value is not the price that we pay. Value is not the cost of building something. Value is what we believe something to be worth in the future, or the benefits that will come for it. For instance, income, right? If it's a rental property, a multifamily, then there's income, right? Every single month. If it's not a multifamily, or it could be a multifamily as well, we expect that when we buy something over time, it will increase in value. That's called appreciation. So it appreciates value. Obviously, we're going to talk about this later also. It's depreciation, which is, if one is appreciating is going up, depreciation is going down. So loss of value. It's use. So when we buy something, right, we look at the use. Is it useful to me for its purpose, right? And of course, tax benefits as well. All right, we're going to talk about all this stuff today. We're going to break it into two parts. Now, ownership of real estate produces income where there are leases on the land, the improvements, or on air, surface, or subsurface rights. Brenda, so cost and value are two different things. Yes, and I'm going to address that also later on, because look, how much did it cost to make this, right? When you buy clothes, to the simplest example, when you buy clothes, you pay like $20, you pay $100, you pay $200. It's totally up to you, but it's based on what we think that is worth, right? We think that, for instance, some people pay $700 for a jacket thinking it's going to last their lifetime, right? Others pay $700 just for a brand, right? We talked about this a little bit last week. It's about your perception of what something is worth. It's not what it costs to build, right? So this costs probably like $2 to make, let's say, right? But it's sellable for $20. Am I going to pay $20 for it? If I see the worth in it, the value in it, right? Sure. So cost and value are not always the same. No. Let's see. Andrea M. Can't read anything. Is it only me? Gilbert says no. No meaning you can't read, or Gilbert, can you read? You're good. Sebastian, video quality did drop a bit, but YouTube is fine. You're watching on both? Okay. It's a little blurry. It's blurry for me too. Okay. I don't know why. Why is it blurry? Give me 1 second. I'll let you know right now. Video. Video is good. Salvage 720, salvage 720. Okay. Is it better like this? Yeah? All right, I'll figure this out later. All right, so where were we? Oh, so I addressed Brenda's question. All right, so such income is part of real estate value because an investor will pay money to buy income stream generated by ownership of the property. Appreciation, as I said before, appreciation is increase in the market value of a parcel of land over time, usually resulting from a general rise in the sales price of real estate throughout a market area. Such an increase, whether actual or projected, is another investment benefit that contributes to real estate value. So some people, sometimes, they pay something above the value because they expect the future worth. And that's one of the things that's been happening now in today's market, right? In today's market, there's been people, like the house that goes is listed for $500,000 and people are giving $550,000, right? We were talking at lunchtime, talking between the agents about a property in LA that was listed for 1.3 and sold for 2.3. So $1 million above asking price. Why a whole $1 million? Hey, people give different values. It's whatever they expect as future return, whether it's in appreciation, income, tax benefits, or sometimes they need to, again, as tax benefits, they need to bury the money as well. Now, the way a property is used, whether residential, commercial, agricultural, recreational, etc., in large part determines the property's value. Each kind of use has its own benefits, as we were just pretty much talking about right now, right? The next page says that depending on the current tax law, tax benefits from ownership of a property may take a form of preferred treatment of capital gain, tax losses, depreciation, and deferrals of tax liability. These tax benefits contribute to income and potential sale of a property. So we're going to talk about all this stuff using these economic principles. Now, some of this stuff we already briefly talked about last week when we were talking about real estate economics, right? We talked about supply and demand, right? We talked about it. We talked about utility, transferability, so being able to use something, right? Transferability is being able to sell in the market, right? If you're limited on the transferability or sellability of something, then it doesn't have as much value, okay? So if you're locked. Anticipation, substitution, contribution, change, highest and best use, conformity, progression and regression, assemblage, and subdivision. Now, supply and demand, we already covered, so we're going to move forward. Utility. The property, right? The property The fact that a property has a use in a certain marketplace contributes to the demand for it. Use is not the same as function, so we cannot get confused here, right? Use is not the same as function. For instance, a swampy area may have an ecological function as a wetland, but it may have no economic utility if it cannot be put to some use that people in the marketplace are willing to pay for, right? So utility, ecological function, right, is different from my ability to use it for something that benefits me and the community. Now, transferability is just being able to transfer from one person to another. Anticipation. Now, this one is big. Anticipation. Anticipation is the benefits that a buyer expects to derive from a property over a holding period. So again, it could be the income, it could be the appreciation. We anticipate when investing in something, right? We anticipate that return, okay? And that's what really, to me, gives value to something, is that anticipation. If I invest in something that's going to be damaged tomorrow, how much is it worth? There's still value to it. How much is it worth, though? Do you see what I'm saying? So if it's something that tomorrow is gone, it's cheap. If it's something that's going to last for a long time and I can use it and use it and reuse it and so on, it has more value, like a car, right? As an example, or the house itself. So that one's easy. Now, substitution, right here. Substitution. According to the principle of substitution, a buyer will pay no more for a property. It's substitution. No more for a property than the buyer would have to pay for an equally desirable and available substitute property. For example, if 3 houses are for sale are essentially similar in size, quality, and location, a potential buyer is unlikely to choose the one who is priced significantly higher than the other 2. So substitution is, I got 3 mice right here, right? Computer. Now, these 2 are exactly the same, and this one's a little bit different. But the function of all 3 is the same, right? Function of all 3 is the same. Now, this one that's a little bit different sells for $400. Don't ask me why a mouse would be $400. This one sells for $380, and this one sells for $399. Which one would you buy? The 400, the 380, or the 399? Let me know in the chat real quick. And Sebastian, I'll take you up on it. Whenever you want to pass by, let me know. Why would you guys... Oh, okay. Ron goes for the 400. Why would you guys go for the 400? Joshua as well. You guys were on speaker and said, hey, let's say 400 together. Why would you go for the 400 instead of the 380? Why would you pay overprice? Hey, Sanam. Sanam just said 380 as well. Why would you pay for something that's overpriced and serves the same function? Okay, the one penny more and slightly different, pay premium for better quality, okay? Because it's different and provides something the others don't have. Okay. Could be. All right. I'll take you up on that one, right? But the majority of the people, if you guys notice in the chat, right? The majority of people said, we'll go for the 380. It's substitution, right? They all serve the same function, right? And now based on the things we've learned, anticipation, how much more of a difference is it going to be? How much more income can I bring? How much more appreciation will we have? Anticipation, right? Based on transferability, we can transfer, utility is the same, supply and demand in the area, pretty much the same, right? So I'll substitute any of the other 2 for the cheaper one. See, one just has a different color, for instance, or the other one has maybe the garage, while mine doesn't, right? And people are willing to settle for that. Go ahead, quick. All right? So people make choices based on that. I, for once, am willing to wait and have something, let's say, there's a bunch of polos on display. Now, since I'm grabbing a polo here, a bunch of polos on display, right? They're all black, as an example. Hey, one is a brand one, like you guys were talking about brand here. One is not a brand one, but it's very similar. Why would I choose the brand one? Because I expect to last longer than the one that's not? It's perception. Remember that? We talked about it. People are willing to invest whatever way they want. Again, people give different values. Contribution. So the principle of contribution focuses on the degree of which a particular improvement affects market value of the overall property. In essence, the contribution of the improvement is equal to change in market value that the addition of the improvement causes. So if you guys remember, I said that one of these houses did not have a garage. There's different value. If you're able to add a garage, it increases in value. In the example we have here, it says adding a bathroom to a house may contribute an additional $15,000 to the appraised value. Thus, the contribution of the bathroom is $15,000. Now note, very important here, the contribution is $15,000, right? Because he has a bathroom, mine an extra bathroom, and mine doesn't. Yours is worth $15,000 more than mine is. But note that the improvement contribution to value has little to do with the improvement costs. The foregoing bathroom may have cost $5,000. It may have cost $20,000. It doesn't matter what it costs. In this market, it's worth $15,000. All right? This is why it's very, very important we understand, right, that certain things are not worth doing. Because if you're going to spend $20,000 to increase $15,000 in value, is that a good investment? It's not. So now we're going to your question, where should you draw the line of quality versus price? Exactly what I just said, right? So what is that addition in quality, right, for instance, going to be worth in this market? I can have the best toilet, the best bathtub, the best kitchen, right? But if you're in the wrong neighborhood, and when I say neighborhood, I'm talking about price values, ranges. If you're in the wrong neighborhood, is it worth it? Are people going to be like, oh my God, I got to buy this one that's extremely overpriced for the area because it has the best kitchen ever? Some people will say yes. The majority, if you guys notice what happened in the chat, the majority say, oh no, the kitchen is a kitchen, right? And I'm not trying to say kitchen is a kitchen like discarding you investing in the better or worse kitchen. It's just opinions. People are always looking to save versus spending. And if it has the same functionality, same utility, people are usually looking for, the majority of people are looking for that discount. Okay? We can improve the kitchen later on. When market value goes up, we'll take an equity line and improve the kitchen. Now it's worth it because everything's up here in value versus when we're buying down here. Right? So everybody, different perspective. Now, when this occurs, if you overpay for something, then we have what's called diminishing returns. Diminishing returns. Okay? Diminishing returns is you're losing value. It was not worth the investment. Joshua says, I think it comes down to how much of a discount it'll actually save you in the long run. Weighted risk analysis. For an investor, yes. For the average buyer, right? And that's why realtors, we need to understand this stuff and be able to explain. For the average buyer, no. It's the cheaper one, right? Today, we have interest rates that are ridiculously low, right? So anybody can buy a house pretty much. But the houses are overpriced. There's still that investor that will say no. There's still that regular buyer that will say no, right? A listing was presented to me a couple days ago. It was a 2-family in Hillside for $500,000. The moment I heard $500,000, I'm expecting to be a 3 or 4, right? But then when I heard 2, I'll wait. You understand? Different perspective. Even though it makes sense, so let's weigh the risk analysis, like you're saying, a way of risk analysis. Even though with the low interest rates, I'm going to pay almost the same as if it was 5 years ago, right? It's just that now I'm buying, like the monthly is not different. But the value, if market crashes for any reason, I have no equity to work with. If I have a hiccup in my life and I cannot pay for that, like say one of the tenants leaves on a 2-family, right? What am I going to do? It's not like I can grasp to anything. And that's my point of view in things, right? So you got to go with where your property is located and where, of course, your mind is. Change. So we were just talking about it. Market conditions are in a state of flux over time. If you guys remember in chapter 15, real estate economics, we talked about everything being a cycle, right? So everything being a cycle, history repeats itself. Maybe not to the same extent, but values go up, values go down. So these fluctuations and changes will affect benefits that can arise from the property and should be reflected in an estimate of property value. For example, the construction of a neighborhood shopping center in the vicinity of a certain house may increase the desirability of the house's location, hence its value. So something being built around might increase value based on demands or actually kill the value. The other thing we have is the highest and best use. Highest and best use. The principle holds that there is theoretically a single use for property that produces its greatest income and return. Okay? A property achieves the highest and best use, right? Or the maximum value when it's put to its use. If the actual use is not the highest and best use, the value of the property is correspondingly less than optimal. So technically, the highest and best use must be legally permissible, physically possible, financially feasible, and maximal productive. For example, for highest and best use, a property with an old house on it may not be the highest and best use if it is surrounded by retail properties. So if I have a single family, but everything around is now commercial, right? Do you think my property has its best value? Anybody? Eduardo's asking, are banks willing to lend money to someone who wants to buy an overvalued property? No. No. So banks, what they'll do is they'll pay up to a certain percentage of the value, right? So let's say the value is 400,000, they'll give you 96.5 because you got to come up with 3.5%. 96.5 of the 400. And then let's say you're buying it for 450, you're the one responsible for coming up with the $50,000 difference plus the 3.5 of the 400 loan. Hey, Annabelle. Olga, what's up? So Marlon, I'm sorry. Marlon Gilbert, the question was from Eduardo. If the banks were willing to lend money to someone who wants to buy an overvalued property after they have the appraisal input. And that's what I said. They don't. They'll give you the money. They'll give you the money based on appraised value. You have to come up with the difference always. Oh, you're asking about my previous question before I read that? Okay, so it was regarding this example I have right here. If your house is a single family and everything around you is commercial, is that the highest and best use of your property? Is that the best you can do with your property? Do you think it'll be the best value for your property? That was my question. Will that be the best value for your property? Gilbert's saying yes. So you're saying that you're the only single family there, like the only residential, let's put it like that. Forget single family, residential. You're the only residential, right? You're surrounded by retail, and that's the best you can do for your property. How are you going to appraise it? How are you going to give a value to it? What is the utility? Everything we've been talking about. I'm waiting for Gilbert to type in. Everything will be closer to whoever lives there. So, my friend, you're talking about utility. What about everything else? You're going to pay $1 million because everything is right there? Is that what your property is going to be worth because everything is right there? You're the only one in the middle of all the commerce. You have to deal with all the noise. Busy streets. It's the best value. Guys, here's what you need to remember. For value to exist and be able to be easy to assess, it's based on conformity. What is conformity? Everything goes according to guidelines. I just told you earlier, if you improve, I know I'm putting a very bad scenario, but if you improve your property to the point where it has material that's worth $1 million, but you're in an area that all the properties are worth $250, right? Was it worth it, that investment? It wasn't, right? So you need to understand what type of community you're in, what type of neighborhood you're in. If you're in the commercial zoning, then your property should be commercial. Okay? It's called conformity. I won't be able to come up with a comparable. I can't compare and give a value if you're the only one there. Very, very difficult. The same way if you have everything residential and you have only one commercial building there. How do we give value to that one commercial building? Depending on what it is, right? How do we give value to it? These are things to remember. So conformity. This principle holds that a property's maximal value, maximal right here, value is attained when its form and use are in tune with surrounding properties and uses. For example, a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house surrounded by a 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom homes may derive maximal value from a room addition. So you can match what other properties do. It will increase in value. You guys understand? It has to be conforming. And this is why, guys, when we go from neighborhood to neighborhood, you'll see that all the houses on that particular block, right? All the houses on that particular block are single families or 2 families or 3s or 4s, right? They usually are conforming. You don't go to the middle of, let's say, Chatham, right? And you see a single family and another single family, and all of a sudden you see a multifamily in the same block. Unusual. In the metropolitan area, let's say Newark, it's not as unusual, right? Because there's an overflow of people, and plus the way that the township grew from industrial to now residential, right? And mixed with commercial in certain areas. So there you might find some confusion still. But the newer towns, the newer developments tend to conform to its own neighborhood. Okay? We're not going to build something that's outside. We're not going to put an orange in the middle of the apples. You guys understand? Because there's no way to give value there. So conformity. The next thing we have is progression and regression. These two are very important also to understand. Now, what is progress? Because we're talking about progression. What is progress? Progress is improving, getting better, right? Therefore, regress is going backwards, getting worse, correct? In terms of, so advancements involved, yep. So in terms of real estate, progression is when all the properties around you are increasing in value or being developed. Therefore, you, being the one with the cheapest house on the block, without much improvements to it, can see your property value being raised. Why? Because everybody else around improved to the point where yours increases as well. And we find that right here in Harrison, Kearney, Newark. We talked about, in previous classes, I talked about Brooklyn, like right around Barclays Center as an example. Anywhere there's a development, a large development happening, right? If you are the single house on the block, so let's go to what Gilbert was saying before. You're the single house on the block and you're not changing what you're doing, but don't forget conformity. We're all single families, but I'm just not the one that didn't evolve. I'm the one that did not improve. Okay? All I did was maybe some makeup. I painted cosmetically. That's all I did to my house. Right? No big improvement, no major improvements. What happens to the value of my house? No matter what, it goes up because everybody else is improving. They improve their houses, my house goes up. But that first house they improved, if nobody else does anything, it's called regression. Regression is where the other properties around drag your price down because you're the only one that improved. Going back to what I said before, what's the point of putting too much money into a property, right, when you're in the wrong neighborhood, value-wise, okay? Now, if you know of something that's about to happen, and you think, this is about to happen, let me improve my property, because it's going to be worth a lot of money. Let me improve now. There's going to be a demand. People want to buy. Again, Harrison, Kearney, Jersey City, Newark, right? People are about to buy because this is going to happen in the future. Then you can improve. If you have the funds, why not? You're losing for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but in the near future, it's going to be worth the wait. Are you guys understanding this? Now, how can we know, if you guys remember, how can we know something that's about to happen in the city? Anybody remember this? Master plan, correct. So you want to have the town's master plan. You want to know what's happening, what's developing. Like here in Newark, there's so many developments still happening in conjunction with Harrison, right? So the whole Hudson River is being developed, around the Hudson River is being developed. So I know that it's still going to increase in value. Even if not now, 5 years from now, it will increase in value. If not 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So it's still good to invest in Newark. It's still good to invest in Harrison, Kearney, and so on. It's not the optimal prices anymore, considering 5-10 years ago, right? But it's still great investments. Having the master plan is key to determine progression and regression. Should I invest now in my property or stay still? That's why most investors, when they're giving you mentorship classes, for instance, they'll tell you, you buy the cheapest and ugliest house on the block. Because all you have to do is a little cosmetic and let it sit. Is it rentable as is? Does he have any violations, like code violations? Because if he has code violations, then obviously you need to fix those. But if not, if it's rentable, do it and let it sit. Do you guys understand? You let everything else develop, and the house you bought for 200, you now sell it for 400 without doing anything. Living proof. Done that. Just let it sit. Do you guys understand? All right. So this is key, especially when you're talking about potential, as a realtor, you're talking to potential investors. They come to you. You're the expert. You know the area better than anyone, right? All right. The next one we have assemblage. All right. So this is called actually. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this. Have you ever heard of this? IKEA. When you buy something at IKEA, what do you have to do? You have to assemble it, put it together, right? When it comes to land, it's the same thing. If you have a piece of land and later on you buy the one that's right next to it, right? That's not assemblage. You just bought 2 lots. But the moment you ask the city of Elizabeth, city of Linden, city of whatever, right? You ask them to make 1 lot so you can build on it, right? Now you assemble them into one, okay? So assemblage is the conjoining of adjacent properties, and this creates a higher value than the values of the unassembled properties. The value of these properties together, it's called plottage value. So, joining 2 properties, IKEA. If you have a question in the school or state exam that says, hey, what do you call when you join two properties and get a higher value? Right? It's called assemblage. What is that value called? It's called plottage value, because now you have a large plot. Right? So when you have, so think of lot, right? You have a lot. Plot sounds like it's bigger, right? It's something you're planning, right? So planned lot. Think about it that way. It's bigger. So plottage value, assemblage, putting things together. And that's the opposite of subdivision. Subdivision, you have a big lot and you're separating it into 2, 3, 4 lots or more. Okay, so assemblage, putting them together. Subdivision, cutting it into pieces. Big piece of land cut into pieces. Okay. Any questions here before I move forward? Pretty simple so far, right? Well, right? Good. Let me know if you have questions. YouTube, Zoomers. All right. No questions. We are moving forward. Types of value. So there's several types of value depending, right, on the purpose. I'm going to zoom in a second. So it depends on the purpose. So when we appraise something, we have to appraise according to its purpose. A single family cannot be appraised the same way as a multifamily. We got that, but the purpose is still the same. Housing. Now, what about insurance value? Is your car, forget the house, is your car worth the same for insurance purposes as it is for resale purposes? No, of course not, right? What about when somebody dies and there's heirs? They have to figure out what it's worth, right? So it has an appraisal for that purpose as well. All right, so let's zoom in real quick. Types of value. Market value, which is, hey, if we were to sell. Reproduction or replacement value, I'll explain that better later, but that's for replacement purposes. You're trying to rebuild something. Salvage value, there's nothing you can do with it. We all know this from a car. That's why I brought car up. Plottage is, hey, what's the new value now that we put the land together? Assessed values for tax purposes. Condemned is eminent domain. So if the government is taking the property away from you, we know that's called condemning a property, and the process is called eminent domain, right? Reversionary, who remembers this one? Reversionary interest. Reversionary value, reversionary interest, who remembers that? Anybody? No, somebody's typing the answer. End of a leasehold, for instance. Okay, end of a leasehold. So in this scenario, because we're talking about value, it's more for, hey, I gave you the, remember Ron, I gave you the property as long as you use it for hospital purposes, right? I sold it to you, right? I sold, so you're the owner, so freehold, right? I'm not saying for lease is not the same, but it's usually, or more commonly, used when somebody sells to somebody else, and then later on there's a possibility that comes back to me. Life estate as well, for instance, right? So there's a future value. Today, I'm selling it to you for $400,000, Ron. If you don't screw up, the property will always be yours, right? Or whoever you pass it along to. But if you do, what is that future value? When it comes back to me, what is it worth? I think I sold the property to Hui Ping based on her life, right? Sorry, I'm trying to remember because that was day one, right? So, so I sold to her based on her life. Now, we know there's a guarantee, and I'm sorry, Hui Ping, this happens to people. There's a guarantee that she will unfortunately pass away, but the property will come back to me. What will it be worth then? So that's reversionary. So there's remainder and reversionary in transfer of ownership, okay? Hold on. Sebastian, violation of an encumbrance. No. So you used it wrong. It's not a wrong word, but you used it wrong. An encumbrance is anything that limits the property. But it's not always a violation, because if she dies, right, it's not a violation. It's just, hey, that's the end of your ownership. That's what we agreed to. So it's not actually a violation, it's an agreement, right? In Ron's scenario, if he or whoever he sells to changes the purpose or the use of the land, then that would be a violation of our agreement, right? But the agreement in place is an encumbrance. It's a limitation on the deed. So it's great that you remember the words, just the way it was applied here, okay? Appraised value, rental value, leasehold, right, value, insured value, book value, and mortgage value. So market value, already talked. Reproduction value. So again, like I said, we'll talk better about this later on, but these are for insurance. And this is based on the cost of constructing a precise duplicate. So when you see reproduction value, reproduction value means precise duplicate. It's like going back to factory. What materials did we use? So if the property was built 100 years ago, so let's say a landmark, right, or a historic property, we have to restore the property to the original, right? So that means we need to use the original materials, even if they're not used today anymore, right? For instance, copper pipes are not used anymore. But if it was built with copper pipes, the plumbing, then we have to restore it the same. Just as an example, what is the cost of that material today and labor today? That's reproduction value. Replacement value means we have a functional equivalent. So, have you guys ever heard the term aftermarket parts? Aftermarket. So there's the OEM, originally equipped from manufacturer, right? OEM, so that's the factory defaults. And then there's the aftermarket. The aftermarket is, hey, I don't want to spend that much money going back to the dealer, so can you give me something that does the same thing but cheaper? That's usually what we get. It's the replacement. Okay, so there's replacement costs, AutoZone. Marlon said AutoZone. Yep. For pills, generic. I don't know why Gilbert, coming from New York, would talk about pills here, but anyway, I guess people flee New York for a reason. Anyway, Ron says I spend more money in my aftermarket parts. Well, so you're a racer? Is that what it is? Because otherwise, I don't see why you would spend more money. I could say that. So you just like to spend money then? Yeah. Okay. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? 27. So moving forward, when I was 17, I used to do that. I had 3 cars. One was, racing car, even with the small steering wheels and everything, racing back in Portugal. I was the only one of my friends that had all that stuff. I had my weekend car, I had my go to school car, and then I had my racing car. Don't ask me how, okay, Gilbert? It was the generics. But anyway, so anyway, aftermarket parts usually are not the original, they're replacements that do the same. Salvage value. So salvage means that the property reached the end of its economic life. So, as an example, when we put up a wall, right behind me, there's a wall, there's sheetrock. Eventually, this needs to be replaced, just like a roof eventually needs to be replaced. right? Just like plumbing fixtures eventually need to be replaced. That means it reach a point where it's not worth it anymore to maintain replacement. Okay, so there's a value to that. When we look at a house and we say, nope, if I were to fix this house, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars, might as well just knock it down and build it new. Just like a car. When the car is totaled, that means it's salvaged. Totaled, it reached its end, there's no point in fixing. Insurance company says, nope, we're not fixing it, we'll give you some money for it, and then it's up to you. Do you want to keep it, or do you want to get rid of it? Totally up to you. If you keep it, it's going to have a salvage title, and by the way, insurance is way more expensive, right? But gives you the options. Plottage value, you guys already know, and I keep on talking about things that are not real estate. I know. Somebody complained about that the other day. I keep on talking about things that are not real estate. So cars, unbelievable, right? We're talking about IKEA. You know, it's my jokes and my trying to relate things. Hopefully that helps for some people. Stephanie, do appraisers specialize within all these types of real estate values? Actually, yes. Not all appraisals do all types of appraisals. So for instance, this one, assessed value, is for tax purposes. Assessed value is for tax purposes. So not all appraisers know how to appraise for tax purposes. Appraisal is an appraisal. But then, just like in real estate, guys, just like in real estate, I focus in residential in Newark, right? You might focus in commercial in Newark. We're no competition because I don't do it. It's still real estate, but some people just decide to focus on different things. So appraiser is the same thing. Condemned value, eminent domain. Depreciated value is when you lose value for, it's the value that you lose for tax purposes. I'll explain that better later on. Reversionary value, we talked about it already. The appraised value, rental value, and so on. Sorry, leasehold value, insured value for insurance purposes, book value, and mortgage value. So we got all that. Now, how do we appraise market value? How do we appraise market value? So as I said before, value or market value, it's an opinion of price, right? So if you guys go to a jewelry store, bring jewelry, right? That particular store will look at you and say, hey, this is worth $1,000. And then you're like, I'm not satisfied because I think this is worth $10,000. You go to another store and they say it's worth $800. You go to another store and they give you $1,200. If all the stores, like 3, 4, 5 stores you go to, give you somewhat the same, similar value, right? The average of those is what your property is worth. In this case, let's say a ring. That's what it's worth. In real estate, it's the same thing. We're going to compare it to other properties and give what we believe to be the price that a willing seller and a willing buyer will agree on a property. Okay? So when I appraise a property, it's based on what I see on the market and think that a seller would be like, okay, this is what I'll sell for. And the buyer will be like, okay, this is what I'll buy for. So what we believe to be the mutual agreement. If the transaction is a cash transaction, that's considered. If the property is exposed on the open market for a reasonable period. If the buyer and seller have full information about market conditions and potential uses. If there's no abnormal pressure on either party to complete the transaction. If the buyer and the seller are not related. If title is marketable and conveyable by the seller. And if the price is a normal consideration. And that is that it does not include hidden influences such as special financing deals, concessions, terms, services, fees, credits, costs, or other types of consideration. So what are we saying here? What is market value? You guys know cash is king, right? Cash is king. So market value is what I can pay for right now if I had cash. If it's financed, everybody stretches a little bit more, right? Because you're leveraging the money you have, right? But is that the true value? No. So the property exposed on the open market, I'm sure you guys have heard of this. I think I mentioned before that properties nowadays, they're under contract before they even show up on the MLS. How is that the best value of a property? If you don't give an opportunity for 2, 3, 4, 5 offers to come through, how is that the best value? Okay. For instance, I've received 4 offers on a 3, 4 offers on the property over the weekend. The very first one, the property is listed for $229 as an example. The very first one was $232. Okay, $3,000 above asking price. We're happy, right? Should I go for that one because it's above asking price? No. Seller, let's wait a little bit longer. Let's see what else comes on the market. There was like, I think 8 or 9 showings, and we got 3 or 4 offers. So not bad at all. The latest offer was $240,000. By the way, the previous ones, there was another one for $238, and we're like, oh, it's getting better. But then $8,000 seller's concessions. So that brings us down to $230. The $232 also had some type of contribution, like $2,000 or whatever. So at the end of the day, if I had chosen the first one, was that the best offer? If I had forced the seller and say, hey, this is the one, you got to take it, would that be the best offer? No. So how can certain realtors in their right state of mind put the property under contract, right, without presenting it in the open market? How is that the best for the client? Okay, reasonable period of time. Let's see. Gilbert, we put an offer this weekend on a house that is not on the market just because the agent puts a sign up right away. There you go. So, but let me ask you. Let's go ahead. But let me ask you something. Why are you putting offers? You're so close to getting your license. You're putting offers with somebody else? You giving money to somebody else? For sale by owner? No, actually, no. There's a realtor here. What are you doing there? You know what I'm saying? You're giving money to somebody else. Whatever the listing agent is getting paid, if you are representing yourself as a buyer's agent, you can use a portion of that commission towards the down payment, towards closing costs, towards whatever. It's your commission. And the seller's paying for it anyway. Why not use it for yourself? All right? It's fine. You like the house. That's fine. But at least, Gilbert, do this. If you like the house, next time, call me. At least one of us makes money. I'll still help you on the house you like. Do you see what I'm saying? People, your license is great. Use it. Anyway. Next, buyer and seller have full information on market conditions and potential uses. Abnormal pressure. If I had pressured them, it wouldn't be the right value in the 232 I mentioned before. And everything else. All right. So another way of describing market value is that it is the highest price that a buyer would pay and the lowest price that a seller would accept for the property. That's pretty much it. Okay? Whatever is the highest that the buyer will pay, hey, I won't go above 250, and the seller says I won't go below 250. Great, we reached our agreement. That is the most likely to be the market value. Okay? Market price as opposed to market value. Market price as opposed to market value is what the property actually sells for. So if it says price, is what it actually sells for. Market value is what we expect. Worth. Market price is what we agreed to. And this is very simple. You guys, if the property is listed for 500, right? And that's what the average is in the area, 500. But somebody says, hey, I want to put 50,000 above anybody else's, right? Then that's the market price if we agreed on, right? Market value is one thing, market price is another. In today's market, as I said before, right? People are crazy. They're overpaying for things and they don't care because interest rates are so low. The inventory is inexistent. So is that based on supply in the market? Yeah. Inventory is inexistent. So we can ask for whatever we want. I can have a $100,000 house and ask for $1 million. I'm pretty sure there's somebody that'll be crazy enough to say, yep, I'll take it. Right? That's where we are. All right. Now, while most appraisals seek to estimate market value, any of the types of value described earlier may be the objective of an appraisal. An appraisal is distinguished from other estimates of value, like ours, because it's supported by data, as Josh was saying, and performed by a professional. And the key word is this: disinterested third party. Okay? The difference between an appraisal in our comps, or CMAs as we call it, comparative market analysis, the biggest difference between these ones is that usually we represent one of the parties when we give value. An appraiser doesn't. An appraiser does not represent the seller nor the buyer. They're independent third parties that have no interest in the transaction at all. So they can give a better value because they have a better view of it. Okay? Me, I'm always going to look, if I'm representing the buyer, I'm always going to say, no, that's overpriced. That appraisal is wrong. It's worth less. Let's bring the value down. Right? Unless the seller already agreed to it and we want the highest value. And you see the difference? If the seller already agreed, if we're already under contract, I represent the buyer. We're in the contract for $100,000. The appraiser comes in and says, hey, it's worth $300,000. Mr. Seller, we're under contract. Sorry. Right? Do you see the difference? Where the appraiser, that's why it's very important you understand this. There's going to be at least two questions that are related to this. It's very important to understand. An appraiser is not affiliated with either party, has no interest with either party, seller or buyer. Okay? That's why we can never call our own comparables. We can never call it an appraisal. And we have to be very clear about that to potential sellers or buyers. Okay? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is just my opinion of value, being a real estate professional. For us to know the actual value of your property, an appraiser would have to come out and appraise your property. That's it. Okay? Very, very important. But we'll talk about that under the state portion. Now, there's something called broker's opinion of value. Okay? And this is also called broker's price opinion. So you might have a BPO or BOV, depending on the state that you're in and depending on who you're dealing with. They might call one or the other. Here, where I'm at, and most of you, New Jersey, is BPO. That's what we usually call it. Broker's opinion of value. Why is this broker's price opinion? I'm sorry. Why is this important? Because we can dispute appraisals. If we feel that the appraiser is wrong, we can issue a BPO and request that they reconsider or challenging, let's say, their opinion. Okay? Now, we might give this usually to lenders and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Loan Officer, we received the appraisal, we just don't think that's the correct value. We would like to challenge based on these comps, and now they might have to bring another appraiser, totally different, not the original one, somebody else, to come and evaluate the property again. If the value goes up, then great, you won. If the value goes down, you're really bad at estimating values. Okay? So even though we're not appraisers, we have to know the fundamentals and the basics to come up with value. Okay? All right, steps in appraising a property. So we have to identify the purpose, and we already talked about it, different purposes. We have to assimilate relevant data, so related to neighborhood, related to the type of property, and so on. Assess the highest and best use. Estimate the value of the lands. Apply the 3 approaches to estimating value. Reconcile the values from the approaches, and then we compile the report and sign off on it. Alini, so a competitive market analysis must be prepared by certified appraisers. No. An appraisal, Alini, an appraisal must be prepared by an appraiser. A CMA or comparative market analysis, we prepare. Okay? But it's limited. It's different than an appraisal. It's limited. What we do is limited. Okay? What they do is more in-depth investigation of values. So appraisers do appraisals. We do comps or CMAs. Okay, so we talked about the purpose already. Data. The data that we're going to use could be several things, as I talked about. It could be the neighborhood. It could be current politics also influence certain areas. It could be the demographics. It could be environmental issues. Everything that's surrounding the property and that influences the property itself, aside from, hey, it's a single family 3-bedroom 2-bath. That's the physical condition of the property. Also goes into play. Okay, so these are data. There's generic and there's specific data. Generic, everything that influences the property. Specific data is properties just like yours, or as close to it as possible. Highest and best use, you guys already know, it's the most profitable use to the property. Land value, the 4th step is to estimate the land value of the subject and not the buildings. So land by itself, as if you were selling it by itself. Okay? And then apply the 3 approaches that we're going to learn today. One of the 3 approaches. It's the sales comparison approach, it's the cost approach, and the income capitalization approach. So sales comparison, cost, and income capitalization approach. Eleni says, okay, because I saw this question on Quizlet, but it had 2 answers. That's why I got confused. Okay. All right. If you ever have, like if you're going through Quizlets or if you're going through the review questions for each chapter, which you guys should be going through them. If you ever have questions, take a screenshot of it and send me a message on WhatsApp. Okay? Ask me questions. Or wait until we're in class. I always say in the beginning of each chapter, if you have questions, drop them down in the chat and I'll address as soon as I get back, right? So right before we start the class, I can address questions of things you went through. But definitely ask questions, okay? It's very, very important. Reconciliation. Guys, what does it mean to reconcile? Anybody? What does it mean to reconcile? Peace. Andrea, you're funny. Andrea M says, peace. Reconcile. All right, come to an agreement, make amends, back together. Okay, Gilbert, we're going to use yours. Back together. All right? We have a value that we're trying to determine, but we split the information into 3 different types of reports. Sales comparison, cost approach, and income approach. What we do at the end is we reconcile what we found into one single report. Okay? Reconciliation is putting it all back together into one. Okay? So reconciliation, okay, is putting the 3 approaches to value into one final value estimate. I got a value according to the sales comparison. I got a value according to the cost approach. I got a value based on the income approach. Which one is the most accurate for this type of property, or which ones are most accurate for this type of property, and that gives the value. And the final step is to create the report. That's it. All right. All right, Jose is in the house. All three of them. Reconcile all three of them. There you go. Now, sales comparison approach. This is where we compare recent sales. Okay? So let's just put something here. Recent sales. Very important. Okay? So sales comparison approach is also called market data approach. Market data approach. Why? Because it's information we're getting based on the market. See, appraisers, they have their own database. So every time they do an appraisal, they submit everything to a database. So when I go do an appraisal on the property that's in the area, I know the composition of the neighborhood properties based on previous appraisals. You guys understand so far? Okay. Everything else, what we do is based on market data only. So whatever we find on the market as far as properties for sale, properties under contract, properties that sold, properties that expired, right? So we only see those, but we don't see the inside of the properties. We have a brief description of the property, but we don't see the inside of the property, right? Appraisals usually have access to full reports of previous sales. So they're more in-depth. Okay. The sales comparison approach on the next page is widely used because it takes into account the subject property's specific amenities in relation to competing properties. In addition, because of the currency of its data, the approach incorporates present market realities. Like I said, I wrote recent sales, right? Because I cannot compare a property today to one that was sold 10 years ago. Different markets, right? So present market realities. Eleni, when I say take pictures, screenshots, and send me, I didn't mean now. Could have waited. Anyway. So the sales comparison approach consists of comparing the sales price of recently sold properties. I have it here in green. And that's very, very important. Steps in sales comparison approach. Number 1, identify comparable sales. Number 2, compare comparables to the subject property and make adjustments to comparables. And number 3, weigh the values indicated by the adjusted comparables for a final value estimate of the subject. To qualify as a comparable, what do we qualify as a comparable, right? It must resemble to the subject property, which is the one you're appraising, right? In size, shape, design, utility, and location. Would I compare, think about it, would I compare a single family that I'm trying to list, as an example, would I compare to 2 families in the neighborhood? No. Would I compare to commercial? No. So single family, I'm going to compare it to single family. 2 families, I'm going to compare it to 2 families, right? The other thing that I'm going to try to be as close as possible is that single family that I'm trying to figure out value, right, is worth, it has 1,500 square feet. Should I look for properties that have 3,000 as comparables? No, we should be as close to it as possible. So that's very important. Size, shape, design, utility, and location. Properties that sold recently, that means within 6 months. Properties that sold within 6 months. Why is that key? Because again, I'm not going to compare it to something that was a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, 10 years ago. I need to be as close to the current sale date, especially in today's market, how things are going crazy, right? You buy something today, tomorrow is worth $50,000 more, right? I'm exaggerating, but it could happen. But if you buy something today, in 6 months, it will have a different value. In 1 year, definitely different value. You want to be as close as possible. In fact, I try to be within 3 months, okay? The best experience that I've had is looking for 90 to 180 days. So 3 to 6 months, right? And obviously, it must be also in close proximity. So you're not going to compare something in Newark to something that's somewhere in Trenton, for instance, or in Houston, Texas, right? It has to be in the same city, hopefully in the same neighborhood, because from neighborhood to neighborhood, it changes values as well, right? And then it has to be an arm's length transaction. What is arm's length transaction? Arm's length transaction is very simple. Stay there. I'm going to fight to have, I'm the seller. I'm going to fight to have the value of my house to be the highest possible, right? And you're going to fight as a buyer, so stay there. I don't know you. You're going to fight to have your value as low as possible because you're the buyer. Now, why arm's length? Because people that we allow within the arm's length usually are family or friends, right? So there's some type of influence. With family or friends, what do we tend to do? Oh my God, I have to see this person again. So sure, yeah. All right, let's get the sale going. Let's charge more, right? No, people tend to charge less. So Jonathan wrote even on both sides. Yeah, we can go with that. Even on both sides. Everybody fights for their own. Okay. Marlon says, give him a break. I know. Make a deal. Yep. So usually you want to be what's called, Jose just wrote, strangers. So it's relative strangers. Because it could be an acquaintance. If it's somebody that you happen to know, but you don't have a close relationship with, right? You're still going to negotiate the best for yourself. I'm not going to be like, hey, oh, you're the guy from the cafe, right? Like, yeah, all right, so let me negotiate the price down for you. No, we don't do that. When it's somebody we have a close relationship, then we give them that break. We make a deal. Gilbert says, I charge family more. You are a smart man. You know why? Because they didn't come back. They'll never beg for it again. Like he goes like, yep, absolutely. The moment you do things for free for family or you charge less, right? They'll keep on coming after you. All right? At least, I don't know how your family is, but from Gilbert's message, I already know how his is, right? Are they all from Brooklyn? No. I mean New York, sorry. Anyway. You guys are from Jersey? All right. Even worse. Andrea says Union, New Jersey. And fewer Portuguese, even worse. I'm telling you right now, Andrea's like agreeing with me. We're even worse. Portuguese, they want everything for free. What, Brazilians are like that too? I know, right? All right. Sebastian, I'll tell them I charge 9%, but I'll do the 6% for them, even though I do 6% usually. Yeah, but don't tell them. Shh. Tell them that. Gilbert says I'm Spanish, so yeah. I guess every single culture has their own thing, right? Free 99 everything. True. So true. Andrea M says that's why I changed to lawyer or from lawyer to makeup artist. You used to be a lawyer and you became a makeup artist? You get paid more as a makeup artist? Sorry, I'm a little lost on that one. Jose says family's always trying to take advantage of. Yeah. Oh, in Portugal. In Portugal, you get paid more as a makeup artist than you do as an attorney? All because of family? It's even worse. All right. Now, the other thing was time of the sale. So we talked about it. You can put 90 to 180 days. That's what I said before. You want to be within 3 to 6 months. Okay. Arm's length, we already talked about it. Disinterested parties. All right, next thing we have is adjusting comparables. Why do we need to adjust comparables? Because recent sales might not have a house that's exactly the same. We're looking for single family, 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a garage. But there's only one house on the block that has that sold recently that had a garage. The other houses that we're comparing to have no garage. And one of the houses has an extra bedroom. The other one has an extra bathroom. So we have to adjust for these differences. If you guys remember before, we said that a bathroom in whatever market, a bathroom is worth $15,000, right? So if the house that I'm comparing to has an additional bathroom, right, then mine is worth $15,000 less when compared to that sale. So we need to adjust, yep. We add or deduct values, right? We add or deduct values based on those differences. Very, very important. We add or deduct values based on those differences. Okay? So if the comparable property is better and they sold for $400, we're going to adjust that value to be $15,000 less. Okay, because they have something better, we have to drop that price. Okay, I'll show it to you in a second. If it's an inferior value, the next property, like I have a garage and they don't, right? Then we add that value to theirs. All right, we already covered all this. Time of sale, location, physical characteristics. And the last one we did not talk about yet is the transaction characteristics. Transaction characteristics. Why is this important? If a house sold for cash, is the value going to be the same as mortgage? I think we addressed this right in the beginning. No. Because cash, we get the free 99. Right, Gilbert? I'm paying cash. Can you please, like, no taxes? No nothing, right? Just give me the house free. I'll give you 99 cents for it. If it's with a mortgage, then the bank wants to make sure that everything is there. Like, no discounts. It is what it is, right? What about if it's a short sale? If it's a foreclosed property? Different values to everything. What about if it was an intra-family transfer? Like a marriage, divorce, kids. There's different values in those transactions. Okay, that's why arm's length is what we're looking for, and we need to eliminate anything that was intra-family, not be used as comparable. Okay, very important. All right, weighing comparables. We just talked about it, adding a withdrawing value. I want you to go to the next page. We are on page, on page 228. Page 228. And it says brokers, comparative market analysis, or CMA as we call it. Just reviewing what we just said, a broker or salesperson who is attempting to establish a listing price or range of prices for property uses a scaled down, so a lesser version of the appraiser's sales comparison approach called comparative market analysis, or CMA. While the CMA serves a useful purpose in setting general price ranges, Brokers and agents need to exercise caution in presenting a CMA as an appraisal, which is not, and we already addressed this. It is not an appraisal, so we cannot say that it is. In fact, our comps must have the wording right below that says this is not to be compared with an appraisal, which is performed by a certified or licensed appraiser. So it has to be clear about that. Okay. Here's an illustration, quick illustration about appraisals under the sales comparison approach. So the subject property, the very first one, is our property, right? This is the subject property right here. It has 8 rooms, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, kitchen, living room, family room, 2,000 square feet in gross living area, 2-car garage, landscaping is good, and construction is framed with aluminum siding. You're like, that's a lot of information. Why do we need all this? Because if the construction is different, it has different values. So comparable A, comparable B, and comparable C and D, 4 comparables, right? Sold for different values and they have different attributes. We need to compare those attributes to our property. I'm going to skip this and go straight to the chart. Okay? These properties, this is the one we're trying to sell. It's called a subject property. The other properties, the 4 properties there, right, sold recently. One sold for $1 million, the other for 1.2, the other one for 1.15, and one for 1.09. So, $1 million sales. We're good so far. That's what they sold for. That's not what they're worth when comparing to our property. Financing terms, standard terms. What does that mean? Conventional or FHA, nothing special about it. Sale date, now. The other ones are equal because they're within range. Location, same location, same location, same location, neighborhood. And then this one is in a better neighborhood. If it's in a better neighborhood, we deduct value. Anything that's better, we deduct the value from that one. Okay, it will make sense at the end. Look right here. Age, how old is the building? Comparable A is the same, comparable D is the same, but then B is younger and C is older. If it's a younger property, then it's worth more. We have to deduct from the sales price, deduct the $12,000 difference, but it's worth more. It'll make sense at the end. Lot size, site and view, design and appeal, construction quality, condition, a lot of adjustments, right? At the end, look right here. At the end, we have the net adjustments. Property A, we added $45,000. Why? Because it's lesser than our property. Okay, it's inferior to our property. Property B, we took $144,000 because it's way better than ours. It's $144,000 better than ours. Okay, and property C came out to 0, and property D came out to plus 35. Why? Because it's inferior to ours in certain things. Why are we doing this? Because if I were to use these values, right? If I were to use these values without considering these differences, right? Then the property value will be totally something different than what it has to be. Okay, we need to adjust for those differences. The property value of our property is an average of these. So the average of these 4. Remember, property A sold for $1 million, but we needed to adjust. So here, adjusted value is $1,045,000, right? Property B, right, sold for 1.2, if I'm not mistaken. But after adjustments, in comparing to our property, is worth 1.056, right? 1.056. and so on. The average of these four is 1.120. That's what our property is worth after adjustments. Any questions here? Well, any questions, guys? We're good? All right, so we need to be good at this, even as, because we use this, even as realtors, we need to know how to make these adjustments. As realtors, we need to know how to make these adjustments. Now, it might not be exactly like this. So when we do our appraisals, when we do our estimates of value, we usually have a slider up and down to say, hey, this property is better than ours overall, right? Versus every little thing. So a little bit better, a lot better, and so on. So we adjust based on that. But we need to understand why it's better or worse. Gilbert, a house better than mine, their value goes down, and the house worse than, correct. For comparable purposes, right? Yes. So if they're better than yours, we deduct value. If they're worse than yours, we add value to it, so it stabilizes compared to yours. Yep. How do we calculate the value of the adjustments? So now it's understanding market. That's why I said, Eduardo, in ours as realtors, as salespeople, usually our tools are a lot basic, way more basic than the adjusters. I'm sorry, the appraisers. But we need to have an understanding of market value. So let's say you don't have a tool where you have a slider to determine if it's better or worse. If you have to go item by item, it has an additional bedroom, it has one less bathroom, right? You should be able to understand the market to say, hey, a property sold recently with 3 bedrooms, right? Sold for X amount of dollars. Another property sold recently with 2 bedrooms. What was the difference between them? And that gives you pretty much an idea that a bedroom is worth X amount of dollars, right? So again, it's a matter of experience. It's a matter of being in a particular market, right? If you guys remember, I mentioned this in the last week on Tuesday, right? I mentioned that a market narrows down to a lot of things. A market is not the United States. That's the United States market. A market is not New Jersey. That's the New Jersey market. A market is not Newark. That's the Newark market. And even within the Newark market, as an example, so a market could be anything, right? But even within the Newark market, there's the residential market, 1 family. There's the 2 to 4 family residential market. And then there's the commercial, there's a retail, industrial, and so on. So once you guys start grasping this to the area that you focus on, right, it will be a lot easier for you to come up with values. Okay? You guys got it? Yep. All right, cool. All right, let's do cost approach real quick, and then we're going to go into a break. Some of you need to get your energy back up. Right, Steven? Yeah. I think Zoom was looking at him instead of him looking at Zoom. There's a lot of Z's over there. Gilbert, where's the coffee man? He abandoned me today, man. Coffee man abandoned me. He went to see a listing, a 1.39 listing, right? It was more important than the coffee. What, you saying yes? So messed up. Hold on. Bruno, I have the school exam this Saturday coming up. You recommend me study the practice test A and B on the book? Or all the material from class and Quizlets? Which book do you use? Is it the Dearborn edition, Jose? Let me know if it's a Dearborn edition. Jonathan is doing the classes with company. That's awesome. I charge more, Jonathan. Just saying. All right, Jose says, do you want addition? Okay, version 14, okay. Since you are watching this from YouTube, if you go to the YouTube channel, Jose, I have practice exam A and practice exam B. Most of the questions, I think, if anything, 1 or 2 questions changed. I have them all with explanation there. So the key to passing an exam is not just memorizing answers. That I can tell you right now. But it is understanding. So what I would recommend you do, Jose, is go through my practice exam A and B on YouTube. I mean, try to do it on your own first, right? And then see what the answers are. And my explanations in those practice exams. And if you have any question, reach out to me, okay? All right, so cost approach. What is cost approach? How much something costs to build. So the cost approach is used when there's not many comparables in the area as far as sales or income. Now we have to go to, all right, how much did this cost to build, or how much will it cost to build if we were to knock it down and make it brand new? It's the only way we can come up with value for certain types of properties. What you need to remember is that the cost approach is most often used for recently built properties and special purpose buildings. Okay? Laney says, I've been studying like crazy. My exam is Wednesday. Just went over the videos I mentioned. There you go. If you have any questions, Laney, reach out. Okay? That's cool, because in those I give explanation, not just answers. All right, so cost approach. Guys, very, very important you guys understand that cost approach is used for recently built properties or for special purpose buildings. Why? Think about it this way. If there's properties for sale in the area, one is 10 years old and the other one is 2 months old. How can I compare a 2-month-old property to one that's 10 years old? It's almost impossible, right? So I can compare a 10-year-old property to another 10-year-old property, or at least close to it. If it's brand new, then there's nothing to compare to, right? You guys remember when I said before, progression and regression, right? When I said, for instance, to Gilbert, hey, if you're the only single-family house here and then everything else is retail, there's nothing to compare to. So it's difficult to come up with values, right? So cost approach is used for new constructions, right? Where the cost will more or less determine its value. Or special purpose buildings. We're talking about schools. We're talking about churches. We're talking about hospitals. Special purpose. They don't generate income as a rental, right? They don't generate income. And they don't have many sales. So anything that limits you, so new constructions or special purpose buildings, anything that limits you, we use cost approach. And this is very important you guys remember. Okay? When do we use cost approach? When there's not enough comps or there's no income. Okay? Lack of comps or income. All right. Now the next page, and we already addressed this before, the cost approach has 2 different types of approaches. One is the reproduction approach, and the other one is the replacement approach. Reproduction is if we were to rebuild this building with the same material as we did back in 1930, how much would it cost to recreate an exact duplicate, right? So reproduction, we're looking at exact or precise duplicate, same material, same everything. Where the replacement cost is something that does the same. So instead of copper pipes, we use PVC, right? That's what we use today. Labor is different from one and the other. That's what we use today. Okay? Reproduction, replacement. Now, the cornerstone, and I know I'm skipping a few things because it's not as heavily tested, but remember the things I'm telling. The cornerstone of the cost approach is the concept of depreciation. What is depreciation? Depreciation is the loss of value in an improvement over time. So if you guys remember what I said before, over time, the sheetrock needs to be replaced. The roof needs to be replaced. The plumbing fixtures need to be replaced because nothing, unfortunately, lasts forever. Okay? Nothing lasts forever. There's something called wear and tear, and that's where physical deterioration comes into play. Physical deterioration. There's three types of depreciations. One is physical deterioration, wear and tear. In a school or state exam, if you find something that talks about wear and tear, that's physical deterioration. Okay, so if it says in the example, there's a leak in the roof. Why is there a leak? If it was a brand new roof, there shouldn't be a leak, right? So over the years, wear and tear caused damage to the roof, needs to be fixed. Okay? Look for something that has physical damage when you talk about wear and tear. The next one is functional. Now, functional obsolescence is features of a house, right, that are no longer desirable. Features of the house are no longer desirable. A family room might not be used as family room anymore. Now it's going to be used as a bedroom. We can rearrange it to be a bedroom. It's more desirable, gives you a better value today, right, than to have a family room and a dining room. So maybe let's merge these into one room, and the extra room we're going to use it for bedroom. Or now we have COVID situations as an example. Let's use it as an office space, a teaching space. So functionality of that room changed. You guys understand? So if we're looking at the way the property is built, are those features of the property desirable in today's day and age? Okay? And the next one is economic obsolescence. Okay? It's called economic or external obsolescence. So this is something that's not on your property. Every time you see economic obsolescence or depreciation, as we said, right? It's something not on your property. And because it's not on your property, can you fix it? For instance, I'm right by Route 21, so heavy traffic, and there's a train, the railroad's right next to it. Can I move the train? Can I move the Route 21? Can I move the building? No. So it's incurable. It's not like the family room that I can convert to an office or a bedroom. Do you guys understand? It's not like the roof that I can fix. It's incurable. So anything that's economic or external is always incurable. Yep. Absolutely. Incurable. All right, we got 8 people watching on YouTube. Cool. Incurable. Okay. All right, steps in the cost approach, and we're almost done. Steps in the cost approach. This is the only approach that estimates land separate from everything else. It's the only approach out of the 3. It's the only one, if there's a question in the school or state exam, Which of the approaches considers land by itself? Well, it's the cost approach. Because there's no manufacturing cost to land. Land is land. It's always been there, right? The manufacturing or reproduction or replacement cost is of the building. So, what are the steps in the cost approach? Estimate land value. Estimate reproduction or replacement cost of the improvements. Estimate accrued depreciation, so loss of value over time. Subtract the accrued depreciation from reproduction or replacement cost. And now we add back the value. So we separated the land so we can focus on the building. We choose each approach, whether reproduction or replacement cost approach, right? And then we put it back together. So when looking at it, we have different types of ways to figure out the replacement or reproduction cost. We have the unit comparison or square foot method, which is the most common. This is the most common one. And the second most common one is the unit in place method. The square foot method happens after the unit in place. Now, why am I saying this? Because for you to figure out the square foot method, you have to have an idea of how much a previous building cost to be built. And considering the same material and the square footage, we determined that this building costs $200 a square foot. So now I don't have to think about how many pieces of sheetrock I need, how many 2x4s, how many light fixtures, how many plumbing fixtures. I don't have to think about that when I give an estimate of value. I know that this type of property, or type of building, I'm sorry, in the area is around $200 a square foot. So if I were to knock it down and rebuild it, how much was it going to cost me? Well, $200 times the amount of square feet that we have. And that would be the new value, $2-3 million as an example. You guys understand? So the square foot method. But that could not exist without having unit in place, which addresses the use of material, cost manuals, and estimate of labor, overhead, and builder's profit. All this goes into play, right, to reach value. And there's two more, but they don't usually ask about it. Quantity survey method and the index method. Okay, the most important ones are square foot method and unit in place method. Square foot method or unit in place method. Okay. A quick illustration of how this works. We're done with part 1. Cost approach illustration. If you guys remember, step number 1 was figuring out land value by itself. So if I were to take the building out, the amount of land that I have, if I were to sell it by itself, it's valued at $80,000. So this is land by itself. Okay, land by itself. Okay, now we're going to focus on the building. How much do the improvements or the building cost? So we use one of the 4 methods, as it says here, whether it's the square foot method, the unit in place, the quantity survey method, or the cost index method, right? And we say that the main building would cost $260,000 to build. Other structures that might exist in the area would cost $16,000. So the improvements cost $276,000. And then comes depreciation. What is depreciation? Who can let me know in the chat real quick? What is depreciation? What is depreciation? Loss of value over time. So over time, the stuff that we have in this building over time loses value, right? So there's physical depreciation. If we said physical is because of anybody? Wear and tear. Perfect. So physical depreciation, property, material worn off over time. It could be curable or incurable where it's not worth fixing it or changing it, right? So there's different values. If it's curable, how much does it cost? $10,000. Incurable, how much do we lose? $14,000. There's functional obsolescence. Who remembers functional? What is functional? Obsolescence. Functional obsolescence. No longer desirable. What is no longer desirable, Sebastian? Functional. Whipping wrote physical. Well, physical deterioration is the wear and tear. Functional, Jose wrote small closet. Maybe we don't want to use it as a closet anymore. Andrea M, features are no longer desirable. Correct. Okay. Alini wrote 4-bedroom in the garage. Forget the bathroom. It's 4-bedroom and a garage. So what are you trying to say? We can make it a 5th bedroom in the garage? Because that would be functionality. And some people do that. The other day I was driving by a house and I see the same siding where the driveway is. There's siding. There's no door, right? But then I'm looking closer and I see that there's the window. So the siding, there's a window, right? And right after the window, what do I see? The garage door. They closed it so it's not accessible as a garage, but they left the garage door and everything else inside just in case, let's say they want to sell it later on. The new owner, all they have to do to convert it back to a garage is take out the siding. So they didn't fully destroy the functionality. It's an extra bedroom, right? Without fully destroying the functionality of the garage. Just in case the new owner wants it. So Dre C, right there. Dre, change of use. Could be. Changing it to something else. Right? So the total depreciation, $30,000. All right? So why is this important? Because the building to build new would cost $276,000. But then we have to take into consideration the damages that he has, whether they're curable or incurable. That was physical, right? And functionality. Is it better this way or is it worse this way, right? So in this case, the new value of the building is $246,000. That's the value of the building by itself. $246,000 after depreciation. Now, is that the final value? No, because the house is not in the air. The house is on the land, right? So we need to add the land value. 80,000 plus the building value. The value based on the cost approach is 80,000 plus the 246. $326,000 is how much this building is worth. Alini wrote, okay, decanty, living room into a dining room, so functionality. Alini wrote, the house I used to live, they did that, they made a dining room in the garage. There you go. But if you're going to do that and you intend to sell later, it's a great idea to close it, but in a way that you can change it later on easily. Any questions here? Well, nope. You guys are good? Usually after looking at the numbers, it makes it a lot easier to understand everything we went through. All right. Speaking of numbers, After the break, we're coming back to a bunch of numbers. That's why it's the last thing we're going to address. And I'm going to take my sweet time with it because you guys need to be energized. Make sure you get out of this break with, you come back from the break with a lot of energy. Go get some coffee, Red Bull, whatever works for you without killing yourselves, obviously. But whatever works for you, Gilbert, if you have to run to New York real quick to get those generics, it's totally up to you. But make sure when you guys get back from the break, income approach. It involves math. So we're going to go over some math. Okay? I'm going to go very, very, very slow at it. So slow, some of you are going to complain about it. Okay? Lewis says 20-minute break. Don't think so. I'll give you a 17-minute break. How about that? Not 20. All right, so we're going to get back 8 o'clock. Okay? 8 o'clock, 17 minutes. YouTubers, I am closing this session and open one right after. So if you are subscribed, you'll get the alert. If not, check us out in a little bit. All right? We are back.